Episode 698. Book talk begins at 16 minutes and 51 seconds. Welcome to CraftLit, the podcast for crafters who love books. My name is Heather Ordover, and I'm podcasting from where the Delaware River meets the Old York Road, New Hope, Pennsylvania. Episode 698, Suspended. This episode of CraftLit is brought to you by our lovely patrons at patreon.com/craftlit, our channel members on YouTube, and our premium members at craftlit.com/premium. This week, we would like to thank Barbara Hutchinson, Melissa Weaver-Dunning, Kathleen Rogers, Terry, and Renee Rico. Thank you so much for your support for this show. We could not do this without you. Well, hello, how are you? I'm pretty headachy. Since last time we spoke, our raffle has ended. This is the raffle for Andrew's book. I am recording this before the end of the month, so I haven't selected the new winner, but I will. This month, October 2025, there will be no raffle because I don't know how much recording I'm going to be able to do during the month of October. Why, you ask? Let me tell you. I think I mentioned before during Cranford that my car exploded when I was just outside of Baltimore, which is not very close to home. So it exploded and died utterly. It is still dead. We're donating it to the local voc ed school so that they can use it for their program, so that the young people who are learning how to fix cars can look at it and go, "Dear God Almighty, what hath happened here? What wrath of God moment happened inside this Subaru Outback?" My mom, however, just bought a new car a couple months ago, and she said, "Oh, timing. We'll just drive my car back to you this fall, and then it can be your car." Great. It's 13 years old. I don't care. It runs great. My mom has really, really nicely maintained it. And this means we will be able to drive back our family's typewriter that I used when I was a kid. And I think I wrote fanfic of Star Wars must have been after Empire Strikes Back. One summer, I just got it into my head that what I really needed to do was write a script. I was 14, 15, maybe 14. Yeah, I have vivid memories of sitting in front of the office, the study window at a TV tray with the typewriter on it, typing out a many-paged script. I don't think it exists anymore. I'm sure whatever box that was in got lost to the ethers on one of our moves. But I have fond memories of this typewriter. It is an electric, it's not a manual, but it has very satisfying clickety-clacking as well. So we're going to be driving that back. We're going to be driving back my great-grandmother's Singer featherweight. I did not know it was a featherweight when I was learning how to sew, but that is the machine I learned how to sew on. It has the stitch length lever that has a little nut on it so that you could wind it in and decrease the stitch length and wind it out and increase the stitch length. But also that was the forward and reverse. So if you threw the switch all the way up, I think it went in reverse. If you pulled it back down to wherever it's supposed to, or maybe it's, yeah, no, that's it. And then if you pull it back down to whatever length you have selected, that will go forward at that point. It has the little flip up bed, which is awesome. And it has its own carrying case cover. And I did not realize this was a thing, certainly when I was learning how to sew, until I got the treadle Singer and found out that these featherweight machines, these electric machines, are really sought after. And I do understand why. I think I've said before, it's a solid enough structure, even though it is truly a portable machine, it's solidly enough made that my mom and I took a stretch and sew class when I was in high school at the local fabric store place. I made myself a swimsuit, which if you think about this, it's a straight stitch machine. The women there were like, "You're going to try to do this without a zigzag? And I'm like, I don't have a zigzag machine, so yeah. And I believe one of them said that's not possible, and the other one said, actually, you just have to have the right needle and you have to really pull, like have a hand behind the needle and a hand in front of it and be pulling on that to stretch it to the maximum in order to be able to put the thing on. So it worked. I made a swimming suit, so that was great. But yeah, fun memories of this featherweight, my great grandma's machine. So that's coming back here with me. And then some of my grandmother's china is coming back, not to me, but to my cousin who lives up in New York. We will also stop off and take a look at what Aiden has been doing at Pratt, a sophomore at college. So all these things are very exciting. But what that means is from the 15th on, I will largely be in a car in Tucson and or in a car. So I've been trying to do extra recordings every week so that I would have a backlog of recordings available for posting. That has not happened. The recording days are really hard, and then I wind up taking almost a week to recover from them, and then I have to record just the next week's episode. So I don't know what the recording schedule is going to be like. Luckily, we're not in any kind of big cliffhanger part of either book right now. We're not in a cliffhanger part of Moby Dick. We're also not in a cliffhanger part of Mr. Harrison's Confessions. So I apologize if I skip a couple weeks. You will now know where I am should that happen. But that's also why there isn't a raffle. I don't know where I'll be or how much brain I'll have to monitor these things, and it's just better not. But maybe I'll be able to pick up something on the road that I can raffle off in November. We'll see. Crafty things. So this week I called the episode Suspended, and that is because I did find a better snood pattern. And I will share a picture of this on screen on YouTube and in the show notes as well, so you can take a look at what this better snood looks like. The pattern is a little bit more clearly written out. I don't know that it's significantly different for the basket tree part of the snood, the like netting part of the snood, but the headband part of the snood is fabulous. You slip the last crocheted stitch off of the crochet hook and onto a knitting needle, and then you pick up stitches all the way around and knit those into 1x1 ribbing, which was great, except there was really no gauge to get, and I didn't have her size crochet hook, and she recommended cotton yarn, and I thought, I don't want cotton yarn. It's gonna be bulky and heavy and not be stretchy at all, and I kinda need the stretchy. She was very pro non-stretchy snoods. For some reason, my brain rebelled and it's like, no. So I had some old sock yarn that I could use. It's obviously wool. I did that, but whatever gauge she had is not the gauge that I had. And so when I switched to the knitting needles, I first used the needles that she recommended and then realized that was not going to get this headband small enough to actually be useful. It was kind of hanging down, not quite to my shoulder, but definitely below turtleneck edge. And I went down another 2 needle size. I think she went from an 8, US 8 to a US 6, and I did another 2 or 3 rows down on a US 4. And that worked mostly, but I had also, because I didn't know how big the hairband part, the knitted hairband part was gonna be, I had also added a row of crochet on, and she was increasing the number of stitches in the netting sections by 1 or 2 at that point every time she started a new round. So I followed in kind, and that was a mistake because even rolled up into like a pseudo bun, my hair eventually started to slip through it just started to come through. So I've gone back and I've re-netted some of the sections on the bottom half of the snood so that my hair will not fall through these holes. So yeah, I've modified it a lot, but like I said, It was clearer and easier to crochet, and I really liked the way the knitted headband portion worked. I did wind up taking the crocheted along thing, and then I doubled it up and crocheted the basically two chains together to make a pretty sturdy. It's still stretchy, but it's not stretchy. I did that for the previous version of the snood. I stole that and I put it through this snood as well, and it was just enough snugginess for me to feel secure. And yeah, so I was very happy about this, but the real reason I was happy is because her pattern recommended something I had never heard of before. I am sure some CraftLit listeners have done this. It was sure news to me. A suspended cast off. Now, I did video myself doing this, and if you watch the video, you will see my hands are pretty shaky. It was a pretty shaky hand day. But I tried to watch a video, it didn't work. I went to a blog, I found, individual still pictures that I could follow. It made sense. I did a video of me doing it, saying the things out loud that I wish somebody else had said when they were demonstrating it, both on the blog page where the written instructions appeared, as well as the videos that I saw that explained it. So the important thing to know is if you are interested, I will link out to the blog post that I used. If you want to see my video of it, we're going to put that at the very end of today's episode. So you don't have to watch the whole episode on YouTube. If you don't want to, you can just fast wind to the end, or we'll have a chapter marker that says Heather knits the suspended cast off or something. We'll come up with something neat. And that way you can just come and take a look at what this looks like. It is the springiest, stretchiest, not stretch outable cast off I have ever come across. And I had tried, I think, every stretchy cast off that I came across. Most of the time they came out being stretchy because they were kind of loose. It was the headband part was knit in a 1x1 rib. I bound off in a 1x1 rib, which nobody else demonstrated how to do. So I demonstrated that. And I was really, really happy. Both at the beginning and at the end, I show you just how springy, stretchy this bind off is. Wow. So I'm going to be using that for hats, for socks, for anything that needs some stretch. I am very excited. This week I was able to get vertical for a little while, and so I took advantage of it and did some recording of crafty things that I was working on, one of those being the bind off. I did some painting as well. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see part of the pangolin behind me. I am still working on this beast. I I have to be in the right frame of mind to work on it, and right now I'm starting to get panicky about Christmas, so I'm getting distracted. It's closing in on done. I'd better be done before I fly to Tucson to drive back with Mom. I don't want to be working on that after. But I'm very happy with the way it's coming out. In fact, if you are watching, here's the tail and here's the body. I have removed scales from the body that were just too dark, too saturated, and I've moved those to the tail. And now I'm working on blending between the more saturated colors and the midtones. I have to blend those together and then replace some of the lighter scales on the body. It's not easy. Who knew? Color theory, I tell you what. So don't forget, you can send your crafty videos to us to show while we are listening to the book chapters on the YouTube channel. Don't also forget that it doesn't matter if you have audio. You could be yelling at an animal. It doesn't matter. We're not going to play your audio. But that is also why using the form that we have on the show notes is great, because it gives you an opportunity to say, please make sure when you show this video that you show this is my guild or this is my favorite charity or whatever, So you can tell us what you're doing so that we can tell everybody else what you're doing with notes on screen. And yeah, if you have a guild that you want to publicize or a charity that you want to share or a site that you like to go to that has instructions on how to do what you're doing, anything, feel free. I love getting a chance to see what you're doing. And I think I've mentioned it before, but it's been a while. If you are doing some kind of artsy craftsy thing, it doesn't have to be like professional grade. God knows my stuff is not professional level artsy craftsy stuff. But if you're doing something with children and you can, balance a camera or your phone above what you're doing so we see your hands, as long as we don't see the children's faces, if we just see their hands, that's safe. But don't send video of children where their faces are visible. That we won't be able to show because that's just crossing a line that I do not want to get into. Both kids have said at various times as adults that they really, really respect that I figured out at some point that, oh, I probably shouldn't say their names because the internet is suddenly big and people I don't know are listening to the podcast. And so they became thing one and thing two. And we went back and replaced their names. I think we caught it all with thing one and thing two instead of Aaron and Aiden. Now that they are adult people, we can say that. But they've showed me YouTube channels and TikTok channels of parents who are using their children as content, and it's really creepy. It's really creepy. So, yeah, we don't want to go down that road. That's an unhappy road. Mr. Harrison's Confessions. Last week, we had our lovely picnic, as long as you weren't Mr. Harrison. If you were Mr. Harrison, it was not so lovely. It was a little fraught. There were the women vying for his attention, the mothers or stepmothers or aunts who were pushing him to spend time with their charges. And you had Sophie and Walter, they were really the only people that Mr. Harrison wanted to spend any time with and couldn't. There was a little bit of foreshadowing in there, and our first chapter today, chapter 7, is going to deal with that foreshadowing. Chapter 8 is going to be the beginning of a new arc. So this whole thing made me think that in Cranford we kind of had I think eventually I noticed it was 3 chapters per story arc. Some of this is because, again, these stories were serialized. This one was serialized in The Lady's Companion and Monthly Magazine, and obviously took several issues. I'm pretty sure that she was posting these 3 chapter arcs as her submissions to the magazine, which would make sense lengthwise. But what it also means is I started doing some research. I'm like, is this technically a short story? Is this technically a novella? And it, what I learned is it comes down a lot to the number of words in a story. Like a short story is usually under 7,500 words. Some hit 10,000 words, but really it's usually under 7,500 words. And there is a single plot line. There are no A and B plots. There's no like, and this is what was happening to these other people while that was going on. The same way that you had the Harriet Smith subplot and what was going on with her and the man who loved her and all of that craziness. And you had the Bateses and Jane and all of the things that were happening over there. Those are subplots to the main Emma storyline. You don't really get that here. It's not that other characters aren't involved, but it's not its own plot that is having information added to as a storyline. Like if you were acting, it would be a lot of work on your part to come up with your storyline for being any of the secondary characters in Mr. Harrison's Confessions. But there used to be a thing called a novelette, and that was 7,500 to 20,000 words. A novella is usually 20,000 to 50,000 words, and then a novel is anything upwards of 50,000 words. Mr. Harrison's Confessions is a long short story, but not long enough to make a 2 or 3 volume novel, which is why it falls into the novella side of things. It's about 35,000 to 40,000 words for Mr. Harrison's Confessions, and novella tends to be between 20,000 and 50,000 words total. And one of the reasons why I was looking that up was to try and determine if the number of arcs was counting as subplots and would affect the definition of this book. And the answer is really no. It's not going to. The arcs are self-contained. It's very episodic. Most books, most novels aren't so episodic, but several novellas are from this time period, from the late 1700s into the 1800s. So that's where that comes down. And thinking about books from this time period makes me remember we are putting together the video of that Jane Austen exhibit. And right now, the video images are getting compiled. I am then going to add narration, and then we will put that up, and that'll be available for you, which I am excited about. All right, I don't want to spoil anything that is coming for today's chapters, so I'm just going to let Noel Badrian read to us from Elizabeth Gaskell's Mr. Harrison's Confessions, chapters 7 and 8. Here we go.
Section 4 of Mr. Harrison's Confessions by Elizabeth Gaskell. Recording by Noel Badrian. Chapter 7. I was roused from my sleep in the middle of the night by a messenger from the vicarage. Little Walter had got the croup, and Mr. Morgan had been sent for into the country. I dressed myself hastily and went through the quiet little street. There was a light burning upstairs at the vicarage. It was in the nursery. The servant who opened the door the instant I knocked was crying sadly, and could hardly answer my inquiries as I went up the stairs 2 steps at a time to see my little favourite. The nursery was a great large room. At the farther end it was lighted by a common candle, which left the other end where the door was in shade, so I suppose the nurse did not see me come in, for she was speaking very crossly. "Miss Sophie," said she, "I told you over and over again it was not fit for him to go, with the hoarseness that he had, and you would take him. It will break your papa's heart, I know, but it's none of my doing." Whatever Sophie felt, she did not speak in answer to this. She was on her knees by the warm bath, in which the little fellow was struggling to get his breath, with a look of terror on his face that I have often noticed in young children when smitten by a sudden and violent illness. It seems as if they recognise something infinite and invisible, at whose bidding the pain and the anguish come, from which no love can shield them. It is a very heart-rending look to observe, because it comes on the faces of those who are too young to receive comfort from the words of faith or the promises of religion. Walter had his arms tightly round Sophie's neck, as if she, hitherto his paradise angel, could save him from the dread shadow of death. Yes, of death. I knelt down by him on the other side and examined him. The very robustness of his little frame gave violence to the disease, which is always one of the most fearful by which children of his age can be attacked. "Don't tremble, Watty," said Sophie, in a soothing tone. "It's Mr. Harrison, darling, who let you ride on his horse." I could detect the quivering in the voice, which she tried to make so calm and soft to quiet the little fellow's fears. We took him out of the bath, and I went for leeches. While I was away, Mr. Morgan came. He loved the vicarage children as if he were their uncle. but he stood still and aghast at the sight of Walter, so lately bright and strong, and now hurrying alone to the awful change, to the silent, mysterious land, where, tended and cared for as he had been on earth, he must go alone. The little fellow, the darling. We applied the leeches to his throat. He resisted at first, but Sophie, God bless her, put the agony of her grief on one side and thought only of him, and began to sing the little songs he loved. We were all still. The gardener had gone to fetch the vicar, but he was 12 miles off, and we doubted if he would come in time. I don't know if they had any hope, but the first moment Mr. Morgan's eyes met mine, I saw that he, like me, had none. The ticking of the house clock sounded through the dark, quiet house. Walter was sleeping now, with the black leeches yet hanging to his fair white throat. Still Sophie went on singing little lullabies, which she had sung under far different and happier circumstances. I remember one verse, because it struck me at the time as strangely applicable. Sleep, baby, sleep. Thy rest shall angels keep, while on the grass the lamb shall feed, and never suffer want or need. Sleep, baby, sleep. The tears were in Mr. Morgan's eyes. I do not think either he or I could have spoken in our natural tones, but the brave girl went on, clear though low. She stopped at last and looked up. "He is better, is he not, Mr. Morgan?" "No, my dear, he is—" He could not speak all at once. Then he said, "My dear, he will be better soon. Think of your mamma, my dear Miss Sophie. She will be very thankful to have one of her darlings safe with her where she is." Still she did not cry, but she bent her head down on the little face, and kissed it long and tenderly. "I will go for Helen and Lizzie. They will be sorry not to see him again." She rose up and went for them. Poor girls! They came in their dressing gowns, with eyes dilated with sudden emotion, pale with terror, stealing softly along, as if sound could disturb him. Sophie comforted them by gentle caresses. It was over soon. Mr. Morgan was fairly crying like a child, but he thought it necessary to apologize to me for what I honoured him for. "I am a little overdone by yesterday's work, sir. I have had 1 or 2 bad nights, and they rather upset me. When I was your age, I was as strong and manly as any one, and would have scorned to shed tears." Sophie came up to where we stood. "Mr. Morgan, I am so sorry for papa. How shall I tell him?" She was struggling against her own grief for her father's sake. Mr. Morgan offered to await his coming home, and she seemed thankful for the proposal. I, new friend, almost stranger, might stay no longer. The street was as quiet as ever, not a shadow was changed, for it was not yet 4 o'clock. But during the night a soul had departed. From all I could see, and all I could learn, the vicar and his daughter strove which should comfort the other the most. Each thought of the other's grief, each prayed for the other rather than for themselves. We saw them walking out countrywards, and we heard of them in the cottages of the poor, but it was some time before I happened to meet either of them again, and then I felt, from something indescribable in their manner towards me, that I was one of the peculiar people whom death had made dear. That one day at the old hall had done this. I was, perhaps, the last person who had given the little fellow any unusual pleasure. Poor Walter! I wish I could have done more to make his short life happy. Chapter 8. There was a little lull, out of respect to the vicar's grief, in the visiting. It gave time to Mrs. Rose to soften down the anguish of her weeds. At Christmas, Miss Tomkinson sent out invitations for a party. Miss Caroline had once or twice apologised to me because such an event had not taken place before, but, as she said, the avocations of their daily life prevented their having such little reunions except in the vacations, and sure enough, as soon as the holidays began, came the civil little note. The Miss Tomkinsons request the pleasure of Mrs. Rose's and Mr. Harrison's company at tea, on the evening of Monday the 23rd inst. Tea at 5 o'clock. Mrs. Rose's spirits roused, like a war-horse at the sound of the trumpet at this. She was not of a repining disposition, but I do think she believed the party-giving population of Duncombe had given up inviting her as soon as she had determined to relent and accept the invitations, in compliance with the late Mr. Rose's wishes. Such snippings of white love ribbon as I found everywhere making the carpet untidy. One day, too, unluckily, a small box was brought to me by mistake. I did not look at the direction, for I never doubted it was some hyoscyamus which I was expecting from London, so I tore it open, and saw inside a piece of paper with "No more grey hair" in large letters upon it. I folded it up in a hurry and sealed it afresh, and gave it to Mrs. Rose. But I could not refrain from asking her soon after if she could recommend me anything to keep my hair from turning grey, adding that I thought prevention was better than cure. I think she made out the impression of my seal on the paper after that, for I learned that she had been crying, and that she talked about there being no sympathy left in the world for her since Mr. Rose's death, and that she counted the days until she could rejoin him in the better world. I think she counted the days to Miss Tomkinson's party too, she talked so much about it. The covers were taken off Miss Tomkinson's chairs and curtains and sofas, and a great jar full of artificial flowers was placed in the centre of the table, which, as Miss Caroline told me, was all her doing, as she doted on the beautiful and artistic in life. Miss Tomkinson stood, erect as a grenadier, close to the door, receiving her friends, and heartily shaking them by the hands as they entered. She said she was truly glad to see them, and so she really was. We had just finished tea, and Miss Caroline had brought out a little pack of conversation cards, sheaves of slips of cardboard, with intellectual or sentimental questions on one set, and equally intellectual and sentimental answers on the other. And as the answers were fit to any and all the questions, you may think they were a characterless and werish set of things. I had just been asked by Miss Caroline, "Can you tell what those dearest to you think of you at this present time?" and had answered, "How can you expect me to reveal such a secret to the present company?" When the servant announced that a gentleman, a friend of mine, wished to speak to me downstairs. "Oh, show him up, Martha, show him up," said Miss Tomkinson, in her hospitality. "Any friend of our friends is welcome," said Miss Caroline, in an insinuating tone. I jumped up, however, thinking it might be some one on business, but I was so penned in by the spider-legged tables stuck out on every side that I could not make the haste I wished, and before I could prevent it, Martha had shown up Jack Marshland, who was on his road home for a day or two at Christmas. He came up in a hearty way, bowing to Miss Tomkinson, and explaining that he had found himself in my neighbourhood, and had come over to pass a night with me, and that my servant had directed him where I was. His voice, loud at all times, sounded like Stentor's in that little room where we all spoke in a kind of purring way. He had no swell in his tones. They were forte from the beginning. At first it seemed like the days of my youth come back again, to hear full manly speaking. I felt proud of my friend as he thanked Miss Tomkinson for her kindness in asking him to stay the evening. By and by he came up to me, and I dare say he thought he had lowered his voice, for he looked as if speaking confidentially, while in fact the whole room might have heard him. "Frank, my boy, when shall we have dinner at this good old lady's? I'm deuced hungry." Dinner? Why, we had had tea an hour ago. While he yet spoke, Martha came in with a little tray, on which was a single cup of coffee and 3 slices of wafer bread and butter. His dismay, and his evident submission to the decrees of fate, tickled me so much that I thought he should have a further taste of the life I led from month's end to month's end, and I gave up my plan of taking him home at once, and enjoyed the anticipation of the hearty laugh we should have together at the end of the evening. I was famously punished for my determination. "Shall we continue our game?" asked Miss Caroline, who had never relinquished her sheaf of questions. We went on questioning and answering, with little gain of information to either party. "No such thing as heavy betting in this game, eh, Frank?" asked Jack, who had been watching us. "You don't lose £10 at a sitting, I guess, as you used to do at Short's. Playing for love, I suppose you call it?" Miss Caroline simpered and looked down. Jack was not thinking of her. He was thinking of the days we had had at the Mermaid. Suddenly he said, "Where were you this day last year, Frank?" "I don't remember," said I. "Then I'll tell you. It's the 23rd, the day you were taken up for knocking down the fellow in Long Acre, and that I had to bail you out ready for Christmas Day. You are in more agreeable quarters to-night." He did not intend his reminiscence to be heard, but was not in the least put out when Miss Tomkinson, with a face of dire surprise, asked, "Mr. Harrison taken up, sir?" "Oh yes, ma'am. And you see it was so common an affair with him to be locked up that he can't remember the dates of his different imprisonments." He laughed heartily, and so should I, but that I saw the impression it made. The thing was, in fact, simple enough, and capable of easy explanation. I had been made angry by seeing a great hulking fellow, out of mere wantonness, break the crutch from under a cripple, and I struck the man more violently than I intended, and down he went, yelling out for the police, and I had to go before the magistrate to be released. I disdained giving this explanation at the time. It was no business of theirs what I had been doing a year ago, but still Jack might have held his tongue. However, that unruly member of his was set a-going, and he told me afterwards he was resolved to let the old ladies into a little of life, and accordingly he remembered every practical joke we had ever had, and talked and laughed and roared again. I tried to converse with Miss Caroline, Mrs. Munton, any one, but Jack was the hero of the evening, and every one was listening to him. "Then he has never sent any hoaxing letters since he came here, has he? Good boy. He has turned over a new leaf. He was the deepest dog that I ever met with. Such anonymous letters as he used to send. Do you remember that to Mrs. Walbrook, eh, Frank? That was too bad. The wretch was laughing all the time. No, I won't tell about it, don't be afraid. Such a shameful hoax, laughing again. "Pray do tell," I called out, for he made it seem far worse than it was. "Oh no, no. You've established a better character. I would not for the world nip your budding efforts. We'll bury the past in oblivion." I tried to tell my neighbours the story to which he alluded, but they were attracted by the merriment of Jack's manner, and did not care to hear the plain matter of fact. Then came a pause. Jack was talking almost quietly to Miss Horseman. Suddenly he called across the room, "How many times have you been out with the hounds? The hedges were blind very late this year, but you must have had some good mild days since." "I have never been out," said I, shortly. "Never? Phew! Why, I thought that was the great attraction to Duncombe." Now was he not provoking? He would condole with me, and fixed the subject in the minds of every one present. The supper trays were brought in, and there was a shuffling of situations. He and I were close together again. "I say, Frank, what will you lay me that I don't clear that tray before people are ready for their second helping? I'm as hungry as a hound." "You shall have a round of beef and raw leg of mutton when we go home, only do behave yourself here." "Well, for your sake. But keep me away from those trays, or I'll not answer for myself. Hold me, or I'll fight, as the Irishman said. I'll go and talk to that little old lady in blue, and sit with my back to those ghosts of eatables." He sat down by Miss Caroline, who would not have liked his description of her, and began an earnest, tolerably quiet conversation. I tried to be as agreeable as I could, to do away with the impression he had given of me, but I found that every one drew up a little stiffly at my approach, and did not encourage me to make many remarks. In the middle of my attempts, I heard Miss Caroline beg Jack to take a glass of wine, and I saw him help himself to what appeared to be port, but in an instant he set it down from his lips, exclaiming, "Vinegar, by Jove!" He made the most horribly wry face, and Miss Tomkinson came up in a severe hurry to investigate the affair. It turned out it was some black currant wine, on which she particularly piqued herself. I drank 2 glasses of it to ingratiate myself with her, and can testify to its sourness. I don't think she noticed my exertions, she was so much engrossed in listening to Jack's excuse for his mal-apropos observation. He told her with the gravest face that he had been a teetotaler so long that he had but a confused recollection of the distinction between wine and vinegar, particularly eschewing the latter, because it had been twice fermented, and that he had imagined Miss Caroline had asked him to take toast and water, or he should never have touched the decanter. End of section 4.
So, Walter. First off, I would just like to say, what a horrible nurse. Holy cow, blaming the sister of the little boy who just died is about the worst thing I can imagine happening to a girl that age. This is a girl who's already had to take on so much responsibility in the household. She is still a kid. And then to have this witch with a capital B come off and say it's your fault and it's going to really suck when you have to tell your dad. Meh. That did not sit well with me at all. But the other thing, there were 2 other things that came to mind while I was listening to that part. One is, it's a shame we don't read more books like this where young children die. Now, when I heard him dying of croup, I thought, really? Because I think Aaron had croup as a baby. Somebody correct me. That's when I took Aaron outside. It was wintertime. I took Aaron outside in my arms and sat on the front porch with him at night when it was cold. He's bundled up, but he's breathing cold air. And I think that was one of the things that helped stop the inflammation in his lungs. Does that sound right? Regardless, I did go look this up. And yes, children at this time did die of croup. Their throat, their lungs, their respiratory system was inflamed and would swell and could conceivably swell shut, which would be terrifying to watch. And I think Elizabeth Gaskell did a pretty amazing job of describing what it looked like to watch a child go through this. And I know I've mentioned it before on the podcast when we've done Elizabeth Gaskell before. She lost several children at various ages. Some of them were well into personhood. Some of them were still, I believe, very small infants, but she definitely had experienced this. So when Mr. Harrison is talking about the look on a child's face, when it's very clear they know that they are not long for this world, I think that was pretty personal. She didn't belabor the point, but that had to be hard to write. It had been a while since she'd had small children and lost her children. But I can't help reading these old books, this and Little Women, and there are diseases that kill children that are preventable now, whether because we have modern medicine or because we have vaccines. And I keep thinking, geez, if only people read more of these books, we would not be in the shape that we're in right now. And yeah, it's a shame. We are very lucky to be living when we are, and it's so easy to forget that for me. You might not have that happen to you, but I do often. So that really bites. The other thing that popped into my head as I was listening to this particular chapter, chapter 7, is that Sophie being pushed into this position where she really is assuming the adult female role. I don't get the vibe that she's like the housekeeper, that she's the one with all the keys, but with the other children and the raising of the younger children, she is definitely the one who's running that show. And it reminded me very much of part of Mary Wollstonecraft's Vindication on the Rights of Woman, because one of the points she makes is it's really stupid not to educate women the same way that you educate men. Because if they are going to grow up and become a wife, if that is the only thing that they are going to be able to do as an adult person, and therefore their job is going to be running the household while the man is offsite doing his job, you, gentlemen, would probably want the most educated person you could find to run your household. Because there are matters of economy, but there's also matters of security and safety. There's running a staff. There's raising the children. The children are largely, especially the girls, but both genders at this point, all the genders, they are being educated at home, at least up to a certain age, and then it'll change. But the idea that you could see value in marrying a woman whose brain hadn't been excited by learning was anathema to Mary Wollstonecraft. And I think Sophie is a good example of this. She hasn't gotten a lot of education, but her father is the vicar. And that means that she is a step ahead in general. She is going to have, unless he's really restrictive, and he doesn't seem to be, she will have had access to more reading and writing than other girls her age, which is great. But that also makes it hard to watch something like the way the nurse treats her, or even the kind of default way that her father just expects that she is going to be doing these things, knowing that she really is rather trapped in this environment. This is 50, almost 60 years after Mary Wollstonecraft wrote A Vindication on the Rights of Woman. So if things improved, some, yes, wee bit, but not as much as Mary Wollstonecraft would have liked. I also think that this elucidates very clearly the problem that we are still suffering from in the country. I don't know if this is true in other countries, but in the United States, we tend to peg human value to income. I certainly don't do it by choice, but I think it's just kind of the default. It's like how we measure the economy by the stock market when there are a lot of people who can't invest in the stock market. That is not the best gauge of how well the economy is doing. The stock market was doing very well, is currently doing pretty well, and cost of living is not okay. And when I was in Tucson, there were empty shelves. And we haven't had empty shelf problems here, but I think that's because we're so close to the ports. Tucson has to get everything by either train or by trucker. I don't know. Is this happening to anybody else anywhere else that's like middle of the country? Are you seeing empty shelves too? I find this all very strange. But yeah, it does feel like the more we set human value based on income or the amount of money that you have access to, the more we miss the importance of, yeah, it actually really is crucial to have a home that is pleasant to go back to, a place to raise children if you have children, a place where you can nurture yourself, enjoy yourself, while the world can be all dangerous and crazy and whatever. Having a nice home matters a lot, and that's not something that has a fiscal value attached to it. I know we've talked over the years in the States, starting with before the Equal Rights Amendment, but back in the 70s, about women having full-time jobs that were unpaid. And I think that that's often still true. I think anybody who is home with children or working with children are experiencing that to a large extent. I keep wondering, there's got to be a way to help foster a mindset that recognizes the importance, not not so much the importance of women and what women are doing, but things that don't make money. Like being an artist, most artists are not going to make a ton of money. Doing handcrafts, most of us are never going to make a living off of what we do with our hands. But the value of it is enormous. And yet people still go, "You're doing the granny thing again with the sticks?" I don't hear much of that anymore in my life, but I see other people talking about it, and I know my kids have seen people saying things like that. So, I don't know. I feel like we're ambassadors for sanity in that we read these books and we have a little bit more generational perspective on the impacts of these things on our modern world. Speaking of that, Mrs. Rose and her hair dye. Okay, first off, I didn't realize you could get temporary or permanent hair dye at this point, which is awesome. But as I was working on this week's episode, Bernadette Banner posted a video where she goes back and makes a Victorian depilatory cream, because hair removal of at least the arms and the face for women, hair removal was a big deal even during Victorian times. And not so much legs because, of course, you're wearing those long dresses and who cares? But the depilatory thing was major. And so she goes to I think it's the London School Cosmetics. They have whatever it is. I can't remember. Oh, no, the London School of Fashion. They have a cosmetics lab there. And she gets to work in the lab with an actual science person who goes through doing a modern depilatory recipe and also making the Victorian one. And it's fascinating because they work. And the Victorian one works better, but it also burns a little more. So if you want to see what's involved in that, especially the really cool magnetic stirring plate, I don't know how I missed this. It's so cool. Just going and watching that part of the video is worth the price of admission, which is free, but loved it. So there was poor Mrs. Rose. And it's funny because the first time that I went through it, when Mrs. Rose is saying, "Oh, there's no kindness left in the world," because he had asked her if she had any solutions that he wanted to kind of preemptively keep his hair from going gray. At first I was like, "Wow, she's pretty titchy." But no, actually, the more I thought about it, the more I went, "Oh, yeah, no. He really did say that just as a way to goose her." And the reason why I said that to myself coming through the chapter the second or third time was because of the way his friend Jack Marchand talks about him being very jokey and having a lot of fun as a younger man when they were in school together. It makes a little more sense. At the same time, Mr. Harrison, how did he wind up having to talk to the magistrate and getting arrested? Because he saw a guy knock the crutches out from someone and took a swing at him. So, did he do something did he cross the line? Did he do something that was wrong? Yes, technically, yes. But the reasons why he did it at least can make us feel good about his impulses and what he valued in life. And yeah, Jack, I get the sense that Elizabeth Gaskell knew somebody like this. I don't know who. I don't know if it was a cousin or a brother-in-law or a beau of one of her daughters, but Jack Marchand just seems a little more on the nose as a character than some other people in her books. He kills me. I would not want to be living in the same house as him, but having him come over once every 6 months to liven a party sounds like it would be fun and just about as much of him as I could handle. I also thought it was interesting that they had the paper game that Caroline has where everybody draws a question and everybody draws an answer, and then they read them to each other, and how boring they thought that how boring Mr. Harrison thought that game was. I think depending on what was written on those slips of paper, it could have been, two truths and a dare. It could have been a lot of fun, but it doesn't sound like it was set up that way, so oh well. This is not the last time we will see Jack Marchand, but it will take a little while before we see him again. So he's not a one-off. He'll be back. Let's see. By the time this episode airs, we will have had our second free movie night. I'm sorry I didn't mention this last week. I totally forgot the month was ending and this was happening. The first Thursday of it's right now it's not every month, but it's at least for a few months in a row. I've been getting a hold of movies that I've talked about on the podcast before or that I just love and are fun. This all started because there were several people on the Thursday night Zoom who had not seen Jaws, which we watched at the beginning of September, and Jurassic Park, which we are watching at the beginning of October. So it's the 1st October. This will be October 2nd. Jurassic Park, this October 2nd, which I know is yesterday if you're listening to this in time. The next one, though, which will be November 6th, is going to be Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. If you are a fan of old black and white films, and especially kind of noir-y films, I really hope you can make it to watch this. It doesn't get shown very often. It is Steve Martin. He wrote it with Carl Reiner. The end is ridiculous. It's Steve Martin and Carl Reiner. But the story itself, the mystery itself, has been constructed by using clips from other old films. Alan Ladd films, Frank McMurray, Veronica Lake pops in there at one point. I think she has one line, but God, she's gorgeous. It's Rita Hayworth, Ava Gardner. They're all in there. It's fabulous. Steve Martin's black and white sections are intercut with these old movies, making it look like it's all one story happening at the same time. I think I've mentioned they've rebuilt the sets so that they line up perfectly. It's a genius piece of movie making. And the costumer Edith Head, who costumed, I believe, all of the films that they selected, she costumed this movie as well. And it was the last thing she did. So the movie's dedicated to her, which is pretty awesome. So if you want to see Edith Head taking on a modern noir movie shoot shot in black and white, I believe it was 1980. I was in high school, so 83, 84 when this came out. You can actually see her touch on the clothes that Rachel Ward wears. She is hilarious, by the way, as a femme fatale. Love her. And if you've read The Big Sleep or any Raymond Chandler, her character fits in there very nicely as well, as does Steve Martin's. So that's November 6th. We will be watching that on the Discord server. We have a free movie watch party channel set up. If you haven't gotten onto the Discord server before, you can find out more about it on Patreon. You can find out more about it on the CraftLit.com website. You don't have to be a financial supporter to get on the Discord server. If you go to the show notes, I think we have a link in the show notes as well, just for the episode. So this would be craftlit.com/698. And then on November 6th, 8 p.m. Eastern, show up on Discord, scroll all the way down the list of channels, and at the very bottom, you will see the movie watch party room that you go into. I hope you get a chance to come. It was a lot of fun watching Jaws. It was a lot of fun watching The Last Unicorn. The book was odd. The movie also odd, but it's like proto Studio Ghibli. So I'd show it to kids. It seems to be one of those, if people saw it as a child, it seems to be one of those very beloved movies because it's different from a Disney film. It is not a Disney film. It's not a Ghibli film. It is Peter Beagle wrote his own very own kind of story. The movie was lovely. All right. Don't forget to send crafty videos if you have them. The link is in the show notes. The book for this month's patron book reading party is Random Harvest. So November, end of November, the movie that we watch will also be Random Harvest. And I believe the date for the movie watch party for Random Harvest in November, we have to move it up 1 week. I think this happened last year as well. The watch party will be on November 20th because the 27th is Thanksgiving and I will be unavailable. So there's that. All right, you take care of yourself. Have a great one. If you're watching on YouTube, stick around and you'll be able to see my cast on video. If you are not, don't worry about it. But we will put a link in the show notes to link to the time code so that you can click through to watch just that part. Or you can just click on the video and there'll be chapter markers like there always are. And you can get the suspended cast on video portion of this week's episode. All right. As before, take care. Have a great one. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. So for the snood that I'm making, I just learned an incredible bind off that is very, very stretchy and really quite lovely too. I mean, it's a very, very pretty one. And this is in a 1x1 rib, which I think the bind offs on always look a little clunky. This one, not so much. So here's what you do. It's called a suspended bind off, which is a really weird name for a stitch until you see what the suspense is. So, as with many bind offs, you start by taking the first stitch on your right needle, slipping it over the most recently knit stitch on your right needle. Keep both of those on the two needles. So right needle has the jumped over stitch, left needle has the jumper stitch. My next stitch is a purl stitch. So I'm going to bring the yarn to the front with everything still suspended, go into the purl, wrap it, off, and all 3 stitches are still on there. Next stitch on the left needle is a knit stitch. Yarn is in back like normal. Take the first stitch on the right needle, jump over the second stitch on the right needle. Both stitches, the jumpy and the jumper, are now on their needles. Next stitch on the left needle is a knit stitch. Knit into it while everything is still suspended. Knit into it like normal. Everything, all 3 live stitches on the needles are all accounted for. They've all been knit through or jumped over. So you just pull all 3 off. 2 remain on the right hand needle. Everything is secure. Next stitch here is a purl. So once again, take the first stitch on the right needle, jump over the second stitch on the right needle. Those 2 are suspended. Because it's a purl stitch next, bring the yarn to the front, go into the purl stitch, wrap around the purl stitch, push it back and off. Because right now it doesn't matter if you're twisting your stitches or not. Take everything off, yarn to the back to prepare for the next knit stitch. And that's that. Now I've been doing this with the yarn in my right hand as kind of a modified lever knitting thing. Now I'm going to do it continental so that you can see just how easy it is. So the first two, or the last two stitches that I've dealt with are on the right hand needle, like usual. The next stitch on the left needle is a knit stitch. So yarn is in the back. I'm going to take the first stitch, slip it over the second stitch, suspend both of those stitches on the right and left needle respectively, go into the next knit stitch on my left needle, knit that as usual. Now I've got 3 live stitches on there, pull everything off, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Next one's a purl, so we're going to slip over, suspend, bring the yarn to the front, between the needles, go into the purl stitch. What did I do? Go into the purl stitch, wrap the purl stitch, push the purl stitch off, and everything has been knit. Yarn to the back, slip, knit, off, slip, suspend, yarn to the front, purl, off. Perfect bind off. You can find show notes for this episode and links to other episodes at craftlit.com. CraftLit also appears anywhere you can get a podcast: iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and on, including its own dedicated app. There are lots of ways to support CraftLit, from patreon.com/craftlit to craftlit.com memberships and channel memberships on YouTube. You can find out more details at craftlit.com/premium. And as always, thank you for your support. And remember, if your hands are too busy to pick up a book, at least you can turn one on.